All right, all right, all right. When we record, we smoke sativa, baby. Stay trippy, man. All right. You are now watching J.U.K Sports Show. I am your host, Kyng Ralph, in the building. We're going to start the show. We waiting on Marv to come in. But, pause. But we live, baby. Make sure we send a little shout out to the sponsors. Hope everybody's doing well. Living life all right. Life's going good. Life been whooping my behind the last couple months. But, hey, we still out here fighting, baby. We out here fighting. We scrapping. But send a shout out to the sponsor. You want to do any podcasts like what you're watching, photo shoots, music videos, call the number on the bottom of the screen, 707 Fitboxer. And make sure you go like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. We need your interactions. We need your help. Make sure you go like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff with the socials on the bottom of the screen. You can find me at KynGRalph on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Twitch, add an underscore for Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. And make sure you go like the Facebook page, the He Say, She Say channel. Make sure you go and subscribe at J.U.K Media on YouTube. And go follow us at J.U.K Sports Show, as well as if on Wednesday morning, we release an audio episode on pretty much anywhere where you can follow or listen to your podcast. So Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Go subscribe, follow, share, all of that good stuff. And we got a lot to get into. We're just going to have Marv hop in wherever I'm at. Pause. And before we get going, take a swig of some water. All right. So, NFL championship round. It was a doozy. Some disappointment. You know me, I'm a big Ravens fan, and so seeing the Ravens have to come up short was definitely one that it hurt my spirit a little bit. But Chiefs 17, Ravens 10. Chiefs eke out a victory with a bomb on 3rd and 4, I believe, to Valdez-Scantling, and who has struggled with drops all season. Finally was able to get his hands together, came up with a tough grab to seal the victory. And this is one that it hurt to watch because of I've been singing Lamar's praises all season. He still, at the end of the day, he still should win the MVP. Although I would not be surprised to see Christian McCaffrey come out with it, or even a co-MVP situation like Peyton Manning and Steve McNair back in the days. But if you look at Lamar's numbers-wise, he didn't have that bad of a game. But when you watched the game itself, it just looked like nothing. He just wasn't right in the game. Earlier in the game, they had drops in the first 2 drives. They had overthrows on a fade route to Nelson Aguilar that on a zero blitz. And one thing I've kind of learned as I'm been watching a lot more film, trying to really sink my teeth into being a scouting NFL scout or analyst, as you will. If it works once, believe you're gonna see it again. And later in the game, that's when he threw the interception in the end zone. And it's one of those things where big shout out to the Kansas City Chiefs, regardless of how you feel about Pat Mahomes, Kelsey, Andy Reid, even Taylor Swift. I'm tired of seeing her being displayed when you watch a Chiefs game, but it just is what it is. The amount of money that she brings or has brought in to the NFL this season just by her being at these games. Can't be denied, and I'll talk about that a little later. The ramifications of that and what that has meant for the NFL, but the Chiefs had a heck of a game plan. But at the same time, I think the Ravens didn't really play to their strengths. The amount of runs, like design runs, that they used, or the lack of, was really alarming. I believe they only really ran the ball no more than 15 times. And that's the thing for me, is like when you watch the Ravens, like Ravens football is tough, hard nosed, smack you in the mouth. And on defense, we're gonna come to play. And I felt like eventually the defense did what they were supposed to do. They only gave up 3 points. I don't think they gave up any points in the second half. Now I'm sitting here thinking about it. And because I believe it was 17-3 going into the half. Oh no, 17-7 going into the half. And at no point did the Ravens ever look comfortable. Zay Flowers had a heck of a game, being a rookie, although he made some mistakes. And so I think this is something for them to build on. And to segue into the next segment, was this a successful season for the Ravens? I think being a number one seed, how well they played all year, kind of put them in a position to where, yes, you would say this was not a successful season. But I think the grand scheme of things puts you where you can see this as a success. And I think the getting rid of Greg Roman, the addition of Todd Monken, and how Lamar looked throughout the year. And he might not have put up these crazy numbers, my MVPs of the past, or even when he won the MVP unanimously. But I think that getting Zay Flowers, the emergence of Isaiah Likely, still having Mark Andrews, Bateman, we'll see what happens with Odell because they only signed him for 1 year. Excuse me. They only signed him for 1 year. So I think in the long run, this is a successful season for the Ravens. Hey, what up, bro?
What's going on, man?
Welcome in, my
I had to
boy.
What's going on? I had some camera issues. I had to relocate. We got screaming babies, but we made it.
Hey, believe me, bro. I went through recently. I got a memory of like when we started the podcast, and it was a little short or a little after. Might have been like it kind of coincided around the time of Kobe when he passed, and so I was looking at some of the memories and looking at some of the shows, and it's like the quality of things, my background areas. You can hear my dad all in the background DJing. Rob singing his songs, Elena screaming in the background, like
Yeah,
it's part of the gig, man. It's all good though.
yeah,
Eventually the kids grow, they know to be quiet when you're doing your thing. And
yeah. It's the youngest one right now. The oldest
yeah,
one, I don't really have too many troubles out of. It's the baby, of course.
100%. But you hopped in at the right time, man. Was this a successful season for the Ravens?
Ugh. Probably gonna get a lot of flack for this, but no, because it's not about the regular season. For certain teams, it's not about the regular season. It's about it. It's kind of it becomes a formality, and I'm I'll liken it like this. I'm a Peyton Manning fan, right? And through his career, he took a lot of flack for being the best regular season quarterback. And then when it came to the playoffs, because he lost to Tom Brady, he got notches taken down, right?
Right.
So I'm gonna judge everybody by that same standard. I don't care that you lost to Patrick Mahomes. You lost in the playoffs when you weren't supposed to lose. You see what I'm saying? Now we can get into the performance. That's a different story. You know what I mean? As far as now, all of a sudden, what's his name? Monk is should be fired, just like Greg Roman.
Right.
Just like Greg Roman, when Lamar won an MVP under Greg Roman's system, and then all of a sudden they don't win in the playoffs, it's Greg Roman's fault. And it's the receiver's fault. And it's everyone's fault but Lamar. You see what I'm saying? Now, here we are again, same scenario, better offense. He has receivers, different coordinator, and it's everyone's fault but Lamar. So I was just like, for me, I would say no, because it was all about what can he do in the playoffs. So no.
And I don't think you're gonna get too much flack for it, bro, because I led with that. I said in the short term, no. I felt like what they were able to do, the defense being the top, maybe the best defense in all of the NFL, them being the number one seed in the AFC, them being Lamar even possibly about to win the MVP. Everybody's assuming he's going to win the MVP, regardless if you agree or disagree with that. I think that in the short term, yes, it was a failure of a season. But I think in the long term, I think it was a successful season, because I feel like, and me personally, outside of the way that the game was called, and we'll get into that later in another topic about why I feel like why the game was called that way. But I felt like the strength of them running the ball and how the Chiefs don't show you that, like, they have a great defense, but I don't think that they're so dominant that you just say, you know what, I'm going to just go ahead and pass the ball 40 times this game. And I think that that's going to get us the victory. But I think that Todd Monken showed that, and it validated the season that they had, them getting rid of Greg Roman. And I've seen people on Twitter, and I don't even really, or even social media, so I don't even pay attention to them because they don't really know football at the end of the day. And I feel like Todd Monken showed that he's a good OC. I think Zay Flowers balled out, and I'm expecting big things from him next year. And as you entered the chat, I was talking about Odell, and we'll see what happens with that situation. But I think Isaiah Likely, Andrews, Bateman, and Zay Flowers are all going to be great weapons for him to have in the future. Hopefully they can lock everybody in for the next couple of years, let him rock out with them. We'll see what happens with the offensive line, but I do think that they need to get someone that can stay healthy year in and year out at the running back position. I'm kind of confused what happened with – I thought they signed Dalvin Cook and then never used him, which was kind of weird to me. But I think in the long run, it's a successful season because it is something to build on. But the short term of what can you do for me this year with everything that they had, the way that he played, he just didn't look comfortable, never looked good. Even those drives where Zay Flowers eventually fumbled at the goal line, the pick that he threw, although I feel like if it was the Chiefs, the way that Isaiah Likely got grabbed at the top of the route, they are calling that, and Pat Mahomes doesn't throw that interception or even get the interception put on his resume. But because it's Lamar, we're gonna ignore the grab at the top of the route, and the fact that he threw it in the triple coverage, we're just gonna say, oh, we're not bailing him out. But Pat Mahomes gets that bailout, and so I do think at the end of the day, the Ravens did not do enough to win the football game. And we talk about it all the time when it comes to like the Warriors when they play a team like the Celtics. It's like, oh, the Warriors aren't shooting themselves in the foot the way that the Celtics would. And it's at the end of the day, the Chiefs never did anything that shot themselves in the foot. No penalties, no crazy penalties, no fumbles, no what do you call it? No interceptions. Even though Travis Kelce out there talking trash just like anybody else would, but lo and behold, you talk trash or stand over a Chiefs player, and now everybody's jumping down Zay Flowers' throat. Pause. And that's the thing for me is why I would say it's something to build on, but it was a failure of a season given everything that they had. And so to keep the show moving along, Lions blow a 17-point lead to the 49ers, 31-34, Niners in the Super Bowl. leads you to the question: was this more about the Lions losing or 49ers taking the victory?
It's definitely about the Lions losing. So much so to where they got into a point where you can see like their play calling came out of desperation rather than them calling from a place of confidence and calling from, like they were earlier in the game. And the fact that he went for it on that fourth down in hopes that like your only shot after that to get the ball would be an onside kick. So if you're factoring that in, hey, we're going to go for this. Worst case scenario, then we could probably get it on an onside kick. Like that's terrible play calling to me.
Right.
Like, but I understand like there's been a lot of momentum change at that point. You want to try to like, get something back, but then you got to realize that the momentum is against you as well. So you
Right.
can't then try to, unless you have a Patrick Mahomes or something like that, that can just, will a play to fruition, then it's not too much you can do then succeed. Hey, this isn't our drive. Let's hopefully we get them on defense with enough time left to go ahead and do something. But the way, I mean, I guess you can say hindsight is 2020. But even in Madden, I'm not making that call.
Oh God,
So
100%, 100%, bro. And I feel like I've seen these memes about Dan Campbell out here playing Madden with real NFL players, and I don't know, bro. I think this. I'm a little torn because I think when it's worked for him all year, and it's got
yeah,
him to this point. But I do think
yeah,
it goes back to what I said about not shooting
this is the
yourself in
playoff
the foot.
stuff.
It's the playoffs.
Yeah, it's the
Every
play. It's
possession
not the
counts.
regular season. Hmm.
Every possession counts. When you have that, and it's another one of them things where it's like you ran the ball 21 times in the first half, and you run it 8 times in the second half, and they averaged about 3 yards a carry. Yes, half of those runs were stopped for losses or 0 or 1 yard at the most. But I don't think that when you got that type of lead, you gotta stay with the football. You got Jameer Gibbs and Montgomery, and you run the ball 8 times in the second half. And that's the thing for me is like Jared Goff's not Pat Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. Like I'm not gonna win or lose with Jared Goff. I'm sorry. Like I know I said he's having a better
You're
year.
definitely gonna lose with them.
Right. I'm like, I know I said that he was having a better year. I was talking with Chris not too long ago, actually recently, over the past week, and I was like, when Cam made the statement about the game managers, the only one I really disagreed with was Jared Goff based on the season he was having this year. Now, if he had made that statement based on other seasons, I would have agreed with him. But I've seen Jared Goff win football games with no running game, and he out there slinging the rock. And those are the things for me. Is like I feel like Jared Goff had a better year, but at the end of the day, your team was built. You traded up to get Jameer Gibbs at this position, or I don't even know if they traded up. I think they did trade up because they took someone early and then got him second. And it was like at that point, you took this position or you took this running back so high. Why not give him the rock in the second half and win or lose running the football when you up by 17? And so I think that the Brock Purdy did what he was supposed to do. I think Brock Purdy definitely solidified himself as a franchise quarterback if he hadn't already. Some of the throws that he made, getting out of the pocket, avoiding sacks, some of his runs, he showed that he was much more mobile, and he definitely put up a game that could have you argue whether or not he's a game manager or not. And so I think when it boils down to it, I'm gonna agree with you. I do think the Lions lost the game, but at the end of the day, I am gonna give some credit to Brock Purdy, that offense, as well as the defense, because the defense, at the end of the day, the defense got like Richard Sherman said earlier today. Uh, they won't drop one more drop of piss for the rest of the game, And the 49ers defense did what they were supposed to do. I think they gave up a touchdown in the second half, and that's it. And did you have anything else before we go to the next topic?
No, that's it.
I bet. And so I was watching Gil's Arena, and they were talking about Wemby versus Chet, Jokic versus Embiid, SGA versus Ant, and it got me thinking about we've had LeBron and Steph for these years. We've had KD and LeBron over these years. T-Mac, Kobe in the past, KG, Tim Duncan. And it got me thinking about what do you think will end up being the best rivalry for the future of the NBA? And I mean that on like a individual player standpoint, not from like a team to team.
Right. That is a good one. The Chet and Wemby. I like that. Um, but I would say there isn't anybody he's feuding or beefing with right now, just because he's on his tear. But once he does get a rival, um, I'm gonna say whoever Anthony Edwards is going up against, I feel like that's just gonna be box office, just because the way he runs his mouth alone. So that's just gonna be a great, you know what I mean? Like that's just gonna be great for the NBA. He hasn't found that nemesis yet, you know what I mean? Maybe because he hasn't elevated his star quite to that level. But I feel like he is doing that this year. So once that does happen, because I don't want to just take your pick and it'd be the same thing. So that's who I would like to see in a big, like a Peyton Manning, Brady, or a Kobe versus T-Max type of a rivalry, something like that. Tim Duncan versus Shaq type of a deal. I think him, just for, like I said, the way he plays and his personality and how he, what he brings on the camera side would be great for the NBA and great for rivalries.
I think the one that can be, I think he could possibly already have one. It just depends on, because when you watch the Timberwolves versus the Thunder, when the game really matters, it's him and SGA are guarding each other.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah,
for the sake of the whole game, that's something where you can argue whether or not is it really a rivalry because one plays the two, the other is really the point. But game on the line, and that's the one thing I do appreciate with it is like we talk about defense in this era, and SGA and Ant, they gonna get after it. And I feel like it's irritating to watch. We've talked about this before because it's like, bro, you got to get a stop at the end of the day. You can't just be out here shooting threes hoping they shoot twos and thinking you're going to get a victory. At the end of the day, you got it's mano a mano. I don't care how much you working on, how much better offenses got. And I almost had that as a topic too because they were talking about on Gil's Arena, they were talking about is defense that bad or is offense getting that much better? And Kenyon Martin was talking about it was a little bit of both. And Gil's on the side of offense is so much better and defense is staying where it's always been. But there's different arguments that you could say. And it's like, this person is going to do this move. If you've watched enough film, this person is going to do this move. How do you let him get to that spot? And it's like there's different things where when we watch the games, it's like I know that Tatum is going to do this side step jump shot, and for some reason, you fall for the cross side step. No, when you know that move is coming.
Just like the LeBron.
Yeah.
That like, bro, like that's first of all, that's the dumbest move I've ever seen.
And it worked, bro. I hate it, bro. Every time I'll be like, this is that bullshit.
But it's like I can speak from experience. It comes like it doesn't matter the end result because the end result is going to be the end result. It comes down to the setup.
Yeah.
You got to go into it like, okay, if I really only have 2 or 3 spots I can hit from, I need to have 2 or 3 different ways to get to each spot. And I was just watching the video of Kobe break it down of when you get somebody in the air, you can either step through if they give you that space, because it gives you that space you can step through, or if they're right up on you, that's when you do the pirouette, the spin move, because they're too close for you to step through. So boom, that's already 2. And I'm pretty sure he has a third that he didn't let out the bag because it's the Mamba. You see what I'm saying? So that alone, and I kind of like, like I said, from experience, you could see that I'm gonna get to the that right elbow no matter what every single time. But I'm gonna get there 3 or 4 different ways, and I'm gonna set it up differently to where what I mean it's gonna look the same, and then it's gonna look different, and I'm gonna end up in the same spot. So that I think that's how, just like Travis Kelsey, he somehow finds a way to get open all the time because he finds the way to make the same route look different.
Right. Right. Like he can run like 3 different routes, but they look like the same.
The same route, yeah.
Like the same route.
Yes. Yes.
And so after they had that conversation, it got me thinking, like, because they got into this big argument about what makes a superstar. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to use this one because I disagreed with who they said was a superstar and who they said was not. And it got me to thinking, like, because at first they tried to say it was only 2 superstars. And then eventually throughout the conversation, they mentioned some other people. And it was like,
the NBA?
In the NBA, yes. And they were specifically like, and this might have been one of the few times I agree with McCants. And so it got me to ask the question, what makes a superstar? Before we even have the conversation of who's the superstar, in your mind, what makes them a superstar?
I think it's like everything you want to quantify someone to make a superstar obviously would make them a superstar, but there's also an unspoken factor that person has that they just have a draw, a lure about them that makes people want to watch them, whether they're really highly extrovert or they're introvert and they're quiet like Tim Duncan. You see what I'm saying? But it's a certain star quality that they have. You see what I'm saying? And it comes. It's not something that can be quantified on the court. It can be off the court when you do cameras and interviews and things like that. You're just like, damn, I don't know why I like hearing this person talk and speak about the game and explain things or even talk about things that are not game related. You see what I'm saying?
Kind of like
and I'll say,
Ant-Man, you can
yeah,
see like he's
exactly. I want to hang out with him. You see what I'm saying? That's what that you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that, and I would say what makes you a superstar, not a star, a superstar. My mom or grandma have to know who you are.
Right.
If not, you're just a very well-known player. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like even if it's just who's that little light Curry, or even if they don't really, you see what I'm saying? But they know it is, so that right there, I feel like it's a generational thing. You know what I mean? When you become what they say a household name, right. That's what a superstar is to me.
And I agree, man, because I think when you really start to think about it and you go through the test of time, it's like there's a difference, man. It's you go back to the Kobe's and T Max and Allen Iversons, but then there's people that were like, dang, they're definitely a Hall of Famer, but they weren't a superstar. And it's like Paul Pierce, like Ray Allen, like although Vince Carter to me was a star because of the allure of the half man, half amazing. How he played on the court didn't necessarily match, but when you go through time and you're talking about the history of the league, you can't leave that person out. And right. that's another thing I'm gonna bring up later on. We're gonna have a conversation about the Hall of Fame, who's in or out when it comes to this next batch of finalists in the Hall of Fame. But I think when we start to have this conversation, I think it's the draw that they bring, the allure that they have. to some degree, I would say how they play on the court. Because when Gil was giving his example, it was like I understood what he was trying to say, but now seeing how everything played out, it is kind of wild. But taking myself back to that time period, it was like, yeah, he right. Because he was talking about, he was like, I was a star where Steve Francis was a superstar. And it was like when Steve Francis was with the Rockets, it was different. Now it was like how his career panned out. He didn't last that long as the star of who he was, but it just was like me standing next to him, regardless. I'm averaging 30 in DC. What he doing with the Rockets is like he's the star of all of my position when it comes down to it. And so I think that now that we've had this part, who would you say and how many superstars do you think are in the league currently?
Like I said, it's going to come down to the casual to almost non-basketball fan knowing about you.
Right.
So I would say 5 to 6. It can't be more than that because there's not that many more elite teams that you can say are in the running for a championship.
Right.
So you know what I mean? That would quantify on the court, you know what I mean, and those other things that go into it. So I would say no more than about 5 or 6. And if you want to who you want to throw in there, you know what I mean? I feel like that's subjective, but it's about a good 5 to 6 superstars in the league.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think that there's some people who are current superstars. I'd probably say 4 or 5. But I would really have to sit here. I can like LeBron, Steph, KD, Giannis, and then at that point, like as much as Jokic has won awards, I don't think that I don't think Grandma gonna know who that is.
No.
I don't think Embiid Grandma gonna know who Embiid is.
No, not really.
But then you got I feel like Luka, Ja. Once he comes back and is healthy, it's kind of hard to have that conversation now. But prior to everything, Ja was on his way. Luka, Ja,
I feel like
and
because of everything, Jaws has made himself a household name because there's been so much talk outside of you know what I mean? Because a lot of people only get buzz around basketball. He's getting buzz around basketball and outside, you know what I mean? So for better or for worse, he has made himself a household name. You see what I'm saying? So I feel like Ja is definitely one of those players.
and I think that it's definitely I do think he is, and it kind of makes me want to because of the conversations we've had about him over the next couple of years. Where does Kyrie Irving fall into that?
Kyrie Irving is definitely a household name. When you have people in different areas talking about you, and as far as political, religious,
Yeah,
sports, you know what I mean, activism. You see what I'm saying? He's all over the place, and he's more or less loved and or hated in most of these arenas. And he gets whether he's loved or hated, he gets respect in all these arenas.
yeah,
So I would say maybe some might say not so much politically, but that's different conversation. But I would say yes, he's definitely put himself in that conversation, much like Ja has because of a lot of stuff off the court.
right. And that's the thing for me. Is when we started to have this conversation, it's there aren't that many superstars. There's a difference between a star like a Tatum. I think that he has the possibility of becoming a superstar. And a lot of it, when I watch them play, me personally, outside of the talks of JB talking about or JB not being able to have a left hand, watching them play, I just don't see that big of a gap between Jason Tatum and and Brown.
I've always thought Brown was a step better than Jason Tatum. They just need to give him the green light so he has that ultra confidence. Because I
Yes.
feel like they kind of have his confidence in a limbo with yanking and pulling when he's allowed to gun and when he's not,
Right.
depending on how good Tatum is having a night. Because that's really what they do with Brown. When Tatum's not having a good night, then they give him the green light. If Tatum's
Right.
having a good night, okay, let him cook.
Yeah.
It's just let him do his thing. You see what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
not like a Golden State situation where Clay is limited and he can't do the things physically that Steph can do. They both physically can do the same thing. You see what I'm saying? And I feel like Brown is a little bit more athletic than Tatum. So I was like, there's that too. And I feel like they don't want the opposite to happen to Tatum, his confidence to start waning. Like, oh, well, are they giving the keys to him? Am I the second fiddle now? Am I the Robin to the Batman? And so they just kind of have them where they are. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's on that.
Because I think that, like, when it comes to this conversation, and the last thing on it is the thing I like about Brown is when his jumper is not falling, his aggression to the rim
Mm-hmm.
is just, it's everything that you want to see. And so I'm just kind of like, that's one of the reasons and one of the main reasons I like Brown over Tatum. And so,
And one more thing before we move on. As far as how do you become a superstar, we're seeing it right before our eyes, whether you like it or not, like it, understand it, right, wrong, or in the middle. Date a pop star.
yeah,
Travis Kelsey is now a household name. People of
right,
all generations,
right.
of all races, creeds, all that other stuff. Because he's dating Taylor Swift, he is now a household name. So I mean that's the number one way to become a superstar, is to date a pop star. Don't do what Jimmy Garoppolo did, because you see that boy ain't got
Porn
energy
star,
to throw the ball more than 14 yards down the field.
porn
Don't
star.
don't take don't take that route.
Hey, shout out to AVN. Hey, speaking of which, Chris and his girl went to AVM, and Buddy posted a picture of him and a particular porn star. I know who she is just by looking at her, but I ain't gonna say who it was. But Chris always got this certain demeanor. Bro, I ain't never seen that nigga smile like that big ass smile he had, bro. If you end up pulling up after, bro, I'm gonna show you the picture. Dog had the biggest Kool-Aid smile. I was like, hey, boy, I see you over there.
That's crazy.
I was fucking crying laughing. But we got a segment called In or Out. Pause. Shout out to It Is What It Is podcast. Another podcast I watch when I get my topics. Um, Shout out to Cam and Mace. But T Sizzle was on what was it? Dang, I forget Keyshawn's podcast that he has. Straight Facts or something along them lines. And so they were talking about him being a Hall of Famer. And so it got me thinking, got me looking at who is on the list, because he's on for next year. We're a year away from his. So it got me looking at the list. And so, start off, we're going to have Antonio Gates. In or out?
Hell yeah, that's not even. You don't even gotta think about that. Like, it's certain people. It shouldn't even. Like, come on, what are we doing? Like, oh, is Tom Brady a Hall of Fame? Like, come on, what are we doing?
Right, right. All right, so we ain't spending too much time on that, but just want to put some of his accolades out there just so you know why we not questioning it.
Yeah.
But he got 8 Pro Bowls, 3-time All-Pro, part of the 2000s decade team, nearly 1,000 receptions, over 11, almost 12,000 yards, and 116 touchdowns. Next up, we got the man, Julius Peppers.
Yeah.
He's another one for me that, like, I didn't have to think about. And I
Yeah,
know,
I low key had to for think about it, but then I was just like, nah, that's Julius Pepper. It's like, yeah, for sure.
and this is one of the things for me is when I start to have this conversation with people is when we have the um, Hall of Fame conversation. there's certain benchmarks for me that you know what, yeah, you in there. Like when it comes to running backs, I've always said you get to 10,000 yards, and as well as you were one of those guys while you was in the league, for me, you're in the Hall of Fame. Me personally, and so i.e. like a Fred Taylor, Eddie George, these are guys that were top five at their positions, if not top three, and had a long, sustainable career. It wasn't like they had 6 years of this. It was 1,000 yard years for 9 to 10 years, and those are and they were that dude at their position in the conferences that they played in. Fred Taylor, somebody I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but we're not there yet. But Julius Peppers, 9-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, part of the 2000s decade team, 2010 decade team, and was Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2002. 160 sacks, 720 total tackles, 52 forced fumbles. Next up, that man, Jared Allen. In or out?
Sorry.
This one for
I
me,
really only remember him being like tops in the league for about maybe 3 or 4 years. I mean, but maybe if maybe the grading curve on defensive linemen is different. Um, but I don't really remember him outside of a 3 or 4 year stretch. You know what I mean? Doing too much or being memorable, having a second run like we see some other defensive linemen have, like a Von Miller. You see what I'm saying? Things like that. So I'm saying no.
and give me a moment while I look up something real quick, because
Yeah.
for me, I've always said that once you get like, there's a benchmark for me of people, and it's when you get around that. It's kind of hard now, given how much we throw the ball now.
Hmm.
But in previous years, I used to have it at where if you got around 120 sacks in your career, and when you mention some of the names who are people that got above that list, you got the Julius Peppers. Julius Peppers is literally fourth in sack totals. Michael Strahan, DeMarcus Ware, John Abraham, Derek Thomas, Dwight Freeney. Like, Dwight Freeney is one that he didn't get in last year, and now he's on his second year, and it's like whether or not he'll get in or not. But Jared Allen got 136 sacks. He was a 4-time All-Pro. But like you said,
3 4 years, yeah.
he doesn't have like the longevity. But it's like when he was at his peak during his time, who was better than him at his position? Given the fact that he got 4 All-Pro. So for me, I would say he's in because he also hit 136 sacks while also having 4
So
All-Pro,
what?
and he was a Defensive Player of the Year.
But what they're gonna do is kind of like a tournament. They're like, with there being already two defensive linemen, is gonna be like who's gonna make it to the next round of voting. Is it gonna be Julius Peppers or Jared Allen? That's what it's gonna come down to.
Yeah.
Unless you have another defensive lineman, then it's gonna be Warren Sapp, Julius Peppers, or Jared Allen. You see how now he's like, wait, because they're not gonna put 3 4 defensive linemen in the Hall of Fame in one draft class. So
Facts.
I mean, in one class. So that's where it kind of becomes of who do I feel like is going to for sure get in as now. Like if you mention if Warren Sapp is on the list, now Julius Peppers goes down. You see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I'm not that he is, but I'm saying if a Warren Sapp type of, like even an Aaron Donald or something like that, then somebody like, then they would drop down the list as far as who's going to for sure make it in. So that's kind of how I'm kind of doing it, like they do it. It's kind of like a voting process through tiers almost. So I feel like if I'm gonna have to leave off Julius Peppers for Jared Allen to get in, then no, Jared Allen does not make it.
I get that. I get that. I get that 100%. Next up, my boy. It's all about the U. Devin Hester.
Yes. Yes. He's the greatest return man of all time, bro. Like he returned the opening kickoff of the Super Bowl to the house. Like that. That's
Should have had two, because I still to this day, when you go back and watch the film, where was the holding at that they called?
uh yeah, I mean,
That
the
phantom
likelihood of
holding
him
call was
returning
like,
too,
what?
nah, it had to be holding somewhere.
No, I'm dead.
Hey, what they say is holding on every play. They just don't see
Yeah,
it. All right, well, it's gotta be holding somewhere.
yeah, that's
Throw the
right.
flag.
Hey, you ever watch Raw Room?
No.
So I'm not gonna cap. They're probably my favorite football podcast because nobody on there is like made an all pro. Like one of the dudes was like a special teams like specialist. One dude was like a nickel corner. Another guy was like a journeyman left tackle. But they talk about like the things in the NFL that don't get talked about, like what it's like to get cut. Like when they're watching film and they're breaking down everybody's mishaps. Then it's like that one dude. They're like, even though he fucking up on film, it's like, oh yeah, you could, like, yeah, next person. And it's like, hey coach, what about me? And it was like, that's how you know that nigga finna get cut after right after film session. And it's like, he was like, you can see, you even like some players they know is they just be like, and it's like, damn, bro, like they be talking about shit like that, and that's
We're not even gonna go over your film because you out of here, bro. Don't even trip.
you out of here.
Don't even trip. We out of here.
Hey, walk with me and grab your playbook.
That's crazy.
That's the one that they be like,
hey, coach needs your playbook.
Yeah, come, hey, bring your playbook and meet me in the office. It's like, damn. But to get back to Devin Hester, 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, member of the 2000s team and the 2010s team. And he had 19 return touchdowns between kickoffs and punt returns. And he averaged like on punt returns, it was like 12 yards a punt return. And then like 25, 30 yards in kick returns. And it's like when you start to think about, we just got done talking about the playoffs and how every possession matters and the position on the field. Think about you kick a punt, you starting off on the 30, 40, even if you pin, most of the time, if you can get to something like where the best punters from there, if they're kicking within the 10-yard line, are going to punt it to like maybe 30 to 40-yard line. So just think about you getting the ball at the 50 because he didn't return the ball 12 yards almost every time, and the threat of them just kicking it away from him because he can return it for a touchdown was available. So he affected the game itself when he was at his peak. But then also just the threat of like when you start to like we were talking about earlier, you start to tell the game, the history of the game. And when you start to talk about different eras, different aspects of the game, if you're talking about the art of kick returning or punt returning and how much it can affect the game, you cannot leave him out.
There's two people when you talk about return men that come to your mind immediately. Before Devin Hester, I mean, I'm pretty sure there's other, but as far as my generation is concerned, before Devin Hester, it was Dante Hall.
Yep.
And Devin Hester. So when you think about return men, those are the two that you think of. So for me, it's a no-brainer. He's in.
Yeah, and I feel the exact same way, bro. And because of the time, I had some other people on here, but T Sizzle, Terrell Suggs, where you got him?
You're gonna have to wait.
You're not gonna.
I mean, it depends who else. It depends. It depends who else, what other linebackers are on there.
This is the part for me, man.
I don't like view him as, you know what I mean? Like he was good, but I don't.
That nigga, he was that nigga, bro, to me. And me personally. Like,
Balso Hart University. I remember. You know
yeah,
what I mean? But
he was a defensive player of the year, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 7-time Pro Bowler, and he's eighth, he's seventh or eighth in all-time sacks.
mm.
Like,
Like I said, it depends. It depends on what other linebackers are he's competing with. Because I think it's only like what 5 people that make it in. It could be more, but it's not. It's only it's a handful of people that make it in each class. So it depends on how many other linebackers. If he's like one of 2 or 3 of the linebacker, I would give him the best shot of being the first ballot,
like
depending on who they are.
he's 2
Like,
sacks behind Michael Strahan. He's he's right in front of DeMarcus Ware, John Randall, John Abraham, LT, Derek Thomas, Von Miller, Dwight Freeney. And those are the things for me. Is like most of them dudes is already in there. So it's like, who are you gonna put that's a linebacker that you can say was better than him? That's not already in.
that's what I'm. That's what I was thinking about. Like, who during his era was balling like him or better than him? Because Ray Lewis was on the tail end of his career by the time Terrell Suggs like emerged as the guy on the defense.
Right, 100%. And so I got him in based on that. And so with the time we got left, man, we got overtime. Our OT segment, we talked about Taylor Swift came out. The evaluation that she added to the league was in the 330 mil range. So was the
That's
game
it.
rigged?
I don't get how you rigged that Patrick Mahomes pass. The one where he went, you know what I mean? That's a hell of a thing to you know what I mean? I can kind of tell when the game is kind of like, I don't think any game is outright rigged as far as who's gonna win, but I do feel like they're like, yo, this has to be a close game for rating sakes. So we're gonna call the game a certain way. You see what I'm saying? I feel like games are rigged in that way. Like, let's get it to halftime tied up, or let's go into the fourth quarter, make sure the game is close. I feel like that in that way, and then whatever happens, happens. You see what I'm saying? So I feel like in that way, but I don't think so. I'm a pretty big conspiracy theorist, but I picked the Ravens to win. You know what I mean? But also as the playoffs progressed, I was like, what did I say? It was a couple shows ago. I was like, Kansas City's going to win this. They're not going to be able to stop Patrick Mahomes,
Yeah.
and that's exactly what happened. So you know what I mean? Is the defenses they were in, all they needed to do was make one stop, you know what I mean? And if they couldn't, and hey, no, it's not rigged. All you have to do is, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. No, I don't feel like it was.
Yeah, it was a lot of things for me, man. It was just like the game plan for the Ravens. Some of the calls that, like I mentioned, Kelsey be talking trash all game. And don't ever get no taunting call. And then the moment Zay Flowers has a big play, is on the ground trying to get up, Buddy grabs his leg. So it kind of like, it's a reaction to something that's happening to me. So it's not like he got up and just was like, yeah, standing over you. It's like, hey, you grabbed my leg, get off me. Now what? Like, and then on top of that, like I mentioned earlier, there's some throws. Patrick, you even posted it. Patrick Mahomes don't ever get no grounding calls, bro.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't.
And
He
so,
doesn't. They were, oh, well, Andy Reid was over there. So,
right,
like,
bro,
what?
what? He's in the game, bro. And so for me, that's why I'm like, that's why I posed the question, bro. That shit rigged, bro. It just was some shit that, like, you're the Ravens and you run the ball 12 times all game.
Lamar Jackson, what?
You telling me that you were that afraid of Pat Mahomes putting up points that you
But
thought.
it doesn't make sense because if you're that afraid of him, you run the ball to keep him off the field. I mean that's how you, when the Colts couldn't beat Tom Brady, you know what they did? Ran the ball.
Right.
A non-running team with Peyton Manning at the quarterback had to run the ball to keep Tom Brady, the great Tom Brady, off the field. That's the only way you can beat some quarterbacks. That when Aaron Rodgers was on his hot streak back in the Packer days, the only way to beat them was to make sure he doesn't see the field, and that's why they came up with. That's why I feel like that overtime rule is BS. It's a strategy.
Yeah.
Now you're going to automatically give the team another possession. Like, come on, dog, that's wild.
And so, given with how much time we got left, I gotta pick one. I feel strongly about this one. So J.K, after the tear that Luka has been on, and he's been playing very good basketball offensively. I think he's averaging like 40 points and like 10 assists over the last 3 or 4 games.
Yep.
And J.K has said that he's already surpassed Dirk. He's a better player than Dirk was, and went on to mention him in the likes of Mike, LeBron, and Kobe, and says that he will end up with a championship, multiple championships later on in his career. Is J.K. tripping?
No. And I'm gonna break down each part because Dirk said himself already right now, Luke is better right now where he's at than I ever was. That's out of Duke. That's out of Dirk's own mouth.
I agree with him. I agree with
And
him.
his style of play is going to make sure he plays for a very long time. I don't know about multiple championships, but I definitely see him getting one, just as Dirk did. There's going to come a time where his game is just, you know what I mean, in that, it's going to be whether the game is transitioning or it's just fitting for his style or whatever. He's going to be able to catch somebody with that slow maul you to sleep and then quick step, you know what I mean, and then he goes right back to he moves at his own at his own pace. He's not uberly athletic. He doesn't rely on athleticism. So I feel like that is going to be able to give him the longevity to end up where those greats are, where the Kobe's, the LeBrons. I don't know about Mike, but you know what I mean. We'll see. As far I feel like LeBron's numbers are just astronomical. He's in a league of his own when it comes to numbers. When it comes to championships, Mike is in a league of his own, and Kobe's right behind him. So I feel like outside of those three, definitely.
And that's the part where I say, fuck yeah, he tripping. Like, yes, yes, he passed Dirk. I'm not. He just went too far, bro. You taking shit too far, bro. What the fuck going on?
And he gonna be the next nigga to go to the moon.
Oh God,
he was throwing on X.
Like, bro, hell, fuck no, bro. Like, you're a liability on defense. At no point in Mike, Kobe, or LeBron's peak were they a liability. They were actually. Mike won a Defensive Player of the Year.
Kobe the kids tell me it's a different game now. You know, hey.
And what was that? 2012 or 20? Well, I think it was the year after they lost.
Mm-hmm.
2012, 2013. He
put the mask on.
Could have when he was just them chase down blocks. And the defense he played that year, he very well could have won the year that they gave it to. I think they might have given it to J.U.K or Mark Gasol one of them years. And it was like he very well could have won that year. And so for me, J.K. is tripping because if he was a coach of another team, he would have not said that bullshit.
It's my guy though. I got to big him up.
That's my guy. I got to talk him up. So I get it, but bro, you're going too far, bro. Chill out.
Hey, Luka gonna be the GOAT. Y'all see it right now.
Cut the cap. I know he the great white hope, but cut the cap, bro. Like that's
Luka.
But with the last little bit of time we got left, man, we got to get up out of here. But make sure you follow us on all of our socials. Follow me at Kyng Ralph on all the platforms at an _ for X or Twitter. And we're out of here. Peace, love, and